I've been working full-time as a solo indie game developer for the past 6 months, but I was not ready. In this video, I'm going to share exactly what happened, the painful lessons I learned, and give you my take on what you absolutely need to know if you're also thinking of doing this. I'll also point you to some crucial resources if you want to maximize your chances. So how exactly did I get here? Well, since April 2020, I've worked full-time as a programmer, but I often felt a sort of existential dread the longer I did that, to be honest. There was a lot that I enjoyed about it, but there were two main problems. I got into programming because I wanted to make games, and that was nowhere in sight. The other problem was the longer I worked in software, the more red flags I slowly started to notice that no one was talking about. By this point, I had already released my first Steam game, Air Obscure, which basically didn't make money. After that, I spent a long time trying to figure out what to do next, scrapping idea after idea before finally committing to my current game, which was more or less my dream game. I figured I'd just have fun with it, take my time, and not worry about money. After all, I had a solid job, right? But then reality hit. If you're working in software or planning to, there are 3 brutal realities to watch out for, because if they apply to where you work, it might be time to step on the gas with indie game development, because disaster can and will strike any day. First, the reality of software companies is that most of them literally cannot sell a finished product. They need to rely on constant updates and subscriptions. Second, a lot of them rely more on investments than actual product sales. Which sounds crazy, but it works if the company can cut so many costs that it looks like they're actually making money. Just to answer a potential objection here, technically cutting costs to become profitable does mean you're making money, but you lose crucial resources like the people who actually understand how the system works, so you lose money in the long run. And so we arrive at the third and most painful problem. When money gets tight, companies will start spending less money on developers. In other words, they will replace you with cheaper developers from the other side of the world. And that's exactly why myself and about 24 of my talented coworkers were let go. I'd be lying if I said I was prepared, but it also wasn't exactly a surprise. They'd been doing layoffs every few months, it was a matter of time. I was already laying the groundwork to some extent for a backup plan with YouTube, my email list, and of course that dream game, so while applying to new software jobs, I began taking the extra time to focus more on my game dev work. I tried selling a few other things I made, but I learned too late that my viewers weren't all that interested in a YouTube course by a guy with only 14,000 subscribers. So I switched gears to focus 100% on getting my game demo done. But this wasn't going well either. When Thomas Brush played my demo on his live stream, I realized I'd made a huge mistake. I built a game for myself and not a game that people could fall in love with. I failed to listen to the very advice I've been promoting. At the same time, a big part of why my game wasn't working is also because I didn't really believe in it. I knew I could finish it, but I also knew done doesn't mean good, and I figured I just didn't have the skill to make this whole thing work. But this mentality sort of turned into an excuse. It took a while for me to realize that what I should be doing is making games that people will love right from the get-go and not realize the idea sucks 2 years into development. So there's a lot of work ahead. In the meantime, what's making all this possible? Obviously, I won't get money from any game I end up launching until I actually do, or unless I was to somehow get a publisher. Until then, there are 2 main things keeping this operation on life support. First, I cannot stress enough how important it is to be able to survive 2 to 3 years off of savings. And believe me, I realize that's easier said than done. Second, YouTube. What you guys might not realize is that even having as few as 1,000 subscribers is a very valuable resource. If you're careful about who you work with, sponsorships can provide a surprisingly stable income stream. So after doing this for a little while and trying all sorts of ways to make myself profitable, let's talk about my recommendations for you if you want to either go full-time as a game developer or just secure some alternative income streams in a volatile industry. First and foremost, you of course need the technical skills. You need to know how to make a game. This is where today's sponsor comes in, Zero to Mastery, and specifically their Unity Bootcamp course. This course will guide you through every step of the game development process, whether or not you've ever made a game or know anything about coding or Unity. You will finish this course with an incredible set of tools to create the games you've always wanted to make. This course teaches you by having you build a complete RPG game project step by step that you'll be super proud of. You learn to create enemies, combat, inventory, dialogue, quests, and more. This course is so detailed that when I was looking through it, there was a ton that even I didn't know about, so whether you're a beginner or more advanced already, the Unity Bootcamp course is for you. Also, it's incredibly affordable for the amount of information it provides. When you finish the course, you'll get a certificate that a lot of the ZTM students put on their LinkedIn to show that you really have the skill. They also have a Discord community of fellow students learning alongside you, which is super helpful, not only for learning together, but also for career advice and all sorts of tips. So go check out the Unity Bootcamp course, link in the description. A huge thanks to ZTM for sponsoring this video. Knowing how to make a game is essential, but is obviously not enough. Our games flop because we keep making that same mistake I made, making games for ourselves and not for others. So what exactly does it take to make games that players will fall in love with? I've been doing a bit of research into this lately. Here's what I think, but let me know if you think I'm missing anything. First of all, players will be predisposed to want to throw your game away on the spot because most games fail to give them a reason to care. To solve this, players should feel immediately attached to the main character. They need to feel what the character feels, something super simple and relatable. Your girlfriend left you didn't forgive your dad, someone shot your dog, something like that. Second, indie games by default get buried on Steam unless they're breathtakingly beautiful and visually unique. I find that new devs don't spend nearly enough time on this step, so make sure you find some unique visual to hinge your game around. Finally, explaining your game to people, which is the core of marketing, is going to be basically impossible unless your game has a strong fantasy that everything revolves around. This might be a hook, but it can also be more like the theme or a pivot point. Every feature of the game should feel like it needs to be there. Now, obviously, if you're not doing this for money, do whatever you want, but ask yourself how much time you want to spend on something that won't do anything for you in return. Personally, I know I can't keep burning time like this. Okay, so that's a broad overview of game appeal. What's next? Well, since relying only on game sales is going to be super dependent on whether or not you nail your game's appeal, I do believe we need a way to harness a steady supplemental income stream, and the best way I know how to do that is to grow an audience on YouTube. So how do we do that? There's a lot to get into here, so I'll try to summarize the most important lessons I learned. First of all, if you try to be a jack of all trades game developer, the algorithm isn't going to know who to promote you to. You need to be laser focused. Either make devlogs, meaning you have to learn how entertainment works, or focus your channel on solving someone's biggest problem. I tried both, it doesn't work. Also, to make sure the algorithm doesn't tank every video you make, think of every reason why your ideal viewer would not click and why they would not want to watch to the end. Finally, the reason your videos don't take off is probably because you're making the first video idea that comes to mind. Think big. How can you make your devlog 10 times more exciting? How can you make your tutorial 10 times more useful? If you do want to learn everything I've used to turn YouTube from a black box of confusion and frustration into a systematic and secure side hustle, link in the description for more details. Once you decide you're going to leverage game development as an income, make sure you approach taking feedback with the willingness to scrap everything you've done and restart. Making something of quality is hard, and developing the humility to realize you're not looking for players to pay you, but rather you're learning how to give those people something they've been dreaming about is the most important skill you're ever going to develop. Don't become like those software companies just looking to meet a bottom line. You're doing this for others. Now, once you dive into taking your game development seriously, you're going to start to come across a whole new set of mistakes that can really set you back and risk forcing you to restart your game again. So to avoid doing that, check out this video next to learn what every new developer needs to do to make sure they can actually transform their dream game idea into a reality. Thanks for watching. I'll try to give you guys an update on how things are going in a few months. God bless.